Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video I want to discuss everything Nikola and what has transpired over the past week or so, because it's safe to say we've seen a lot of big things happen over the past week, which include obviously the 200 million share authorization package that we've all been talking about for the past couple of months, and unfortunately also the case that revolves around Trevor, Milton. As you can see, he recently got a new federal fraud charge, which again could affect Nikola's brand image very slightly and also could have an effect on the stock itself. So that is exactly what I'm going to discuss in this video. But as usual guys, before we get into it, make sure to drop me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. So the first thing I want to start off by addressing is the fact that we're starting to see a big shift in the demand for electrification. Now, although gas prices have gone up in 2022, it's funny to see, but electricity prices have stayed relatively stable. And although we already know this, that EVs are much more efficient for those who want to adopt them, even though their upfront costs are a little bit higher, we are starting to see these massive gas prices take a pretty big toll on the economy and the supply chain. As you can see, we're starting to see a record number of people and truckers quit their jobs and just park their rigs and vehicles that are powered by diesel or natural gas on the side. And so this is not only going to stress the economy and the unemployment rate, but this is also going to stress the already very poor supply chain problem in the United States. And then we know that long-haul trucking is one of the biggest industries in the US because obviously our critical ports in the eastern coast and the western coast are very far away. And because of that, there is a lot of driving that needs to be done to transport goods from one place to the other. And because of record high gas prices sitting at almost $5 a gallon on the national average, people are realizing that EVs are going to be much more cost effective down the road, even if the upfront costs are a little bit more expensive. And as we all know right now, Nikola is the only company in the US with a mass production EV semi-truck on the market. And that is going to play very well in the hands of its first mover advantage. As you can see, we're already starting to see companies like IKEA and some of their transportation partners already test the Nikola tray, and the feedback so far has been fantastic. And not only are people going to realize that these trucks are much better for the environment, but also the driving experience is much better than any other semi-truck on the road, and that's going to help with driver retention at an astronomical rate, because these things will drive just like your Tesla. And as we've seen, consumers love the way that the Tesla drives. It's not about the quality of the vehicle, it's not about the performance of the vehicle, it's about the experience of driving an electric platform, which is much better on especially the consumer side. And if we bring that over to the commercial side, we're going to start seeing a lot of new companies test these vehicles and adopt them into their fleets. And as for the people that have been saying that right now all the images and stuff that we're seeing coming out from other companies about the tray have just been test runs, I don't think that is a big deal, because that is how the fleet adoption industry works. Companies don't just go out and adopt a new powertrain. They need to actually test it out in their duty cycle and in their operations before they can adopt the vehicle, because it's a very big capital expenditure for the year. And the idea is that at the end of the year is when most of these trucks are actually adopted by fleets, because they tend to be preparing for the next fiscal year. And the next year is when obviously we're going to start seeing new trucks out on the road. And so Nikola is in the perfect position here, because they launched in the second quarter, and now they're going to be delivering trucks throughout the second and the third quarter. And these trucks are now going to be ready for fleet use in the fourth quarter for a lot of these fleets that operate on that calendar. And I think that's going to be a very big deal for anybody who is looking to invest in Nikola stock or any other EV stock, because as we all know, historically Q4 has been very hot for EV companies in general. And I think Nikola right now is perfectly positioned to take advantage of that, because obviously they have a massive exposure in not only the hydrogen side, but also in the battery electric side. But regardless, I think we need to now address the bigger question in the room, which is what happened with Trevor Milton this week. Essentially, he got a new fraud charge where he is getting convicted for essentially using a Nikola stock option as a collateral to buy a Utah ranch. Now, this is pretty funny because I don't really see why people are blaming the current executives of Nikola. all the stuff that Trevor Milton was talking about Nikola was mostly done through his social media platforms, right? Through YouTube, through Twitter and whatnot. And so it was very difficult for somebody like Mark Russell to go out there and try to control what he was saying. And I think that is precisely kind of what put Nikola stock in such a massive rally mode. And that's also what ended up causing so many people to lose money because of, what Nicholas Milton said back then. And essentially he just exaggerated the company's abilities. And obviously now in 2022, none of that really matters because the company has made much more progress than even Trevor Milton had said and all that he was bragging about back in 2020. So is this going to have an effect on the stock price? In my opinion, probably not that much. But obviously we're going to see some pretty big headlines come out over the next few weeks as we see Nikola's Milton trial in early July take place. And although I don't think it's going to have any effect on the brand image of Nikola, because we all know that Nikola separated itself, we could still see some pretty big fair articles out there. And so just make sure you don't get caught up in that and make sure that you consistently dollar cost average if you believe in Nikola Motors and their vision, just like you should do with any other stock on the market. As for what prices I've been buying Nikola stock at, as you can see, we've obviously been very close to 52-week low recently. And so I have been buying some shares. I bought some on this dump on June 13th. And I also bought some yesterday, actually, because I just had to, deploy some of the cash that I had. And so I diversified across all my investments in my M1 Finance portfolio. Now, as for when will this stock actually start running to the upside, to be honest, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon because we're in a bear market on the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ is down 30%. And if we're seeing big tech stocks crash, then the chances of Nikola Motors performing well is very low. And so I would not have my hopes up and I would not really cry about the stock price being down because there are a lot of other stocks on the market that are down much, much worse. Obviously, last time I shared an example in the form of Romeo Power, which obviously was also a SPAC back in 2020. And as you can see, this thing hit a high of $39 and is now trading at 50 cents, right? That is a 96% decline. And that's not even considering the massive collapse we've just had year to date. And it's funny because Nikola stock is actually performing just as well as Tesla stock is performing year to date, which is something I find extremely ironic because people have been calling Tesla a much, much better risk to reward investment for the future of EVs than Nikola. And although, yeah, sure, that might make sense on some terms, in terms of evaluation and in terms of the market share opportunity, I think Tesla is much closer to the top than it is to the bottom. And so that's the reason why I'm not a big fan of investing in this stock right now, although I do think the business is fantastic and that if you want to buy an EV stock on the consumer side, it's going to be probably Tesla, even though I think the valuation is a little bit rich. But regardless, I think that's just the take on Nikola I have right now. I'm going to be continuing to buy even if we break underneath this $4.80 region. And now this brings us to a very important point, which is the earnings report for the second quarter, which is expected to happen in early August. Now, the reason why this is a big deal is because potentially we could see a blowout earnings for Nikola Motors in terms of revenue. I don't think Wall Street is really pricing this in right now. And as we all know, the move from no revenue to revenue is expected to be a pretty big movement for any stock on the market, especially for something that is so beaten down like Nikola Motors, because the expectations are low. And Nikola right now is the only company with an EV semi-truck in production that is doing mass tests with companies and fleets across the country. And even if you go onto Yahoo Finance and look at some of the analyst estimates for 2022, their estimates fall right below the 50th percentile that the range of Nikola was given between $90 to $150 million. And so right now estimates are a little bit low. And yes, although interest rates could affect the way the companies want to spend money, I still think this is a good thing for investors in Nikola because it sets the bar relatively low. And the very exciting thing here, which is something I don't see a lot of people talk about, is the fact that, as you can see, for 2023, estimates are sitting at $606 million. So if the estimate of $111 million is in line with what Nikola actually reports, then this number right here should really give you a lot of perspective as to why Nikola's stock valuation right now is sitting so high. People are complaining about it being at $2.5 billion. Well, $2.5 billion is not that high if you can get revenue at $606 million in 2023, because that puts the price to sales ratio at only about 2 to 3, which is pretty low for a company that's growing at 444% year over year. And so, generally speaking, I think the valuation metric and the valuation analysis is top notch for Nikola right now. And although, yes, if they start not delivering units and if they start missing estimates, the stock could go down. I think based on the execution of the company, there's a much higher likelihood that they meet estimates and that they continue to thrive in this massive opportunity there is in the semi-truck market. But as usual, guys, that's just my update on what's been going on with Nikola over the past couple of weeks. Make sure to drop me a thumbs up if you found some value from this video. Let me know down in the comment section below how many shares of Nikola do you own and whether or not you're buying the dip right now, or you think that the price can go a little bit lower in the short term. But as usual, guys, make sure to drop me a thumbs up if you found some value, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.